I think especially with the likes of so many new tools coming in, when we talk about that, the power of analytics, or it's become so easy for somebody to, just go and apply any predictive model. But it has a, there's a flip side to it as well, that it's easy, but then the difficult part is to the interpretation, or first to check a validity of that data, if it's correct or not. And that's, I mean, I've seen a lot of people making that mistake, that it's like you feed in something. Of course the platform tool will give
Yeah.
out something, and that is how it is designed. It will not say, the data is incorrect or this model cannot be applied. It'll try to fit itself and show you something, but then how do you interpret, how do you judge that if it was the right thing, right model to be applied, was the data clean or not? And then interpretation of that again applies your marketing lens, customer lens, that all the segmentation, that how you interpreting that insight as well.
That brings us to the bias on analytics and measurement. And my favorite story is Second World War, wherein it apparently Second World War was the first war when fighter jets were used.
Hmm.
And back then, odds of a plane getting back to the base safely was roughly 50-50.
Right.
And since Air Force was relatively a uh, new unit, most of the senior commanders in Air Force were the ones who were on deputation from Navy. And therefore, when this problem was stated to them that they need to improve the survivability of the planes, they said we should put more armor on the plane, because that's what they knew from their naval warfare days, wherein you put in more more metal on the hull of the plane, the
Right.
outer body of the ship, right? And somebody said if you put in more armor, the plane won't take off. And there's a trade-off between the ammunition that the plane can carry and how much armor you would put on the plane.
Hmm.
It's an interesting story. Back in those days, uh, there was an analyst called Abraham Wald who was running a statistical research group out of Columbia, if I remember correctly, in New York. And when he looked at the sketches of the plane who were returning from the bases, and he suggested we should put more armor where there are less bullet shots.
Hmm.
This is counterintuitive, because uh, if usually people would say let's put more armor where there are more bullet shots, and his argument was this is not the full data. We are
Hmm. Right.
missing the planes who never came back to the base, and we are basing our decision based on only half the data. So the bias in terms of what we analyze based on what is available to us, and within that, if attempt to draw conclusions based on thin data might result in taking a decision which might be much costly.
Correct.
If the customer experience feature which says my CSAT scores went down significantly, and we go after that, and that is correlated with another feature, and we attempt to fixing one but not taking care of the other, it's not going to make any difference to CSAT score when we go back to the user again. The analytics bias is a big deal. The They say if you torture the data hard enough, it will confess to anything.
Yeah.
And if you start with a confirmation bias or a measurement bias, you might end up taking decisions which are not necessarily getting us to anywhere. When we do A/B testing, as you know, if the data is thin, the statistical power is low.
Correct.
You might end up misinterpreting the results. And we've seen time and again analysts in their endeavor uh, to arrive at a conclusion might stop the test,
Right.
because A/B test carries a cost. And literally every A/B testing platform available right now across the globe has statistical power at 65%, which means there's a 35% error rate that could potentially have. Now, if it is set as 65% itself with a 35% error rate, now if it's a marketing decision, one could argue still
Hmm.
it is a huge error rate to account for. So, based on what is important versus what is good to have, there might be merit in raising this bar manually outside these A/B testing platforms to see
Hmm.
are we okay with 65, or we need higher level of threshold to take a call on adding
Depends
additional
on the
feature.
industry also. For example, if it's insurance, they would want 99%. But if it's a, let's say, a FMCG brand marketing to a particular segment of users, they could still be happy with 65%.
So in marketing, people say 80 is okay.
Hmm.
But the A/B testing companies, because they are testing feature, they are okay with 65 as well. So that's the distinction, as you rightly
Right.
said. In pharmaceutical drugs, it's a matter of
Right.
life and death. In case of aeroplane safety, it's a matter of life and death. So 99.99% reliability on some of those is a given. But in places where the cost of
The risk.
decision is not so high and speed is more important than precision, people might be okay with a lower bar.
Hmm.
If you want to launch a feature which says I have a 65% confidence it gets you a market share that you need, you might still be okay with that. But if that feature addition costs you $1 million versus costs you a $50,000 to enable, that's wherein one possibly want to look at the trade-offs between accuracy and speed.
Yeah, it's like a triangle: speed, accuracy, and cost. I mean, at best
Yes.
you can have two. Optimize for two.